Welcome to Global Health Dialogues. Imagine standing at the crossroads of medicine, science, and strategy, where decisions impact not just individual lives, but entire global health systems. That's where you'll find Dr. Paul Burton. As Chief Medical Officer at Amgen, he's not only guiding the medical vision of one of the world's most influential biotech giants, but he's also helping shape how innovation reaches patients across borders. Dr. Burton's journey has taken him from the operating room to the boardroom, literally, from performing cardiovascular surgery to leading global responses at Moderna during the COVID-19 pandemic. With experience at Johnson & Johnson and now at Amgen, his mission has remained clear: to bridge the gap between scientific advancement and real-world impact. Today, we will explore the responsibilities of leadership in a time of extraordinary medical possibility and persistent global disparity. Dr. Paul Burton, welcome to Global Health Dialogues. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Your Royal Highness. It's a privilege to be here with you today. Thank you for having me.
So, Dr. Paul, you were a physician, then you became a cardiovascular surgeon, a career that presumably took a long time to accomplish. And then you transitioned from clinical practice to your current position. Don't you miss chopping up bodies?
So it's a great question. I wanted to be a physician all of my life. I grew up in the United Kingdom, and even as a little child, I was really driven to become a physician. My grandmother had been ill when I was growing up. She had had rheumatic fever. And so a lot of the time when I was a kid, she was hospitalized. And I think that kind of drove this passion in me. And then ultimately I became a physician and a surgeon. I think it all depends on the day. There are certainly some days where I would like to go back. I miss talking to patients. I miss being able to sit there and try and help them during their journey. But, I think the work I do today now lets me do that truly at a population health level. So it's very rewarding. And I have honestly not looked back on the transition to joining the biotechnology industry.
Yeah, fantastic. I suppose life is full of chapters as well. And you're right about that. You are benefiting patients at a population level instead of few patients at a time, a whole population, which is fantastic. Dr. Paul, what are your daily top roles and priorities as Chief Medical Officer at Amgen? Can you explain exactly what that role is, and how does your background in clinical practice make you best equipped to do your job well?
So, as you say, I'm Chief Medical Officer here at Amgen, and in many ways, you're a custodian of that role for a period of time. And I see myself doing that. I've been given this opportunity. I feel very humbled to be the CMO of Amgen. We have 5 different pillars in our organization that covers regulatory affairs. So how does a medicine get approved by regulators around the world? Global patient safety. How safe is the medicine? How do you use it appropriately? Medical affairs. So we interact with physicians and systems, healthcare systems around the world through that organization. And then we have digital medicine. How can you bring the power of wearable technology, AI, that kind of thing to patients today? And finally, global public health. And so, a typical day usually involves interacting with all of those teams. I would say the one thing I've noticed as I have, spent more and more time in our industry is that generally the meetings I have today are usually where there is a topic, an issue that needs some kind of, discussion around how to fix something. And so I try and give that support to the teams. I firmly believe that if you are able to bring great people together all with a similar mission and a vision to help patients, to keep the patient right at the center of what we do, and you empower those people, there's really nothing you can't do as a team. Look after them, have each other's back. It can be very, very powerful. And I try and do that day in, day out.
And as a clinician, I suppose you are that experience that you've had on the ground. You bring in, I suppose, the real, or you voice the real unmet patient needs. You help direct business executives to, I suppose, you channel patient voices and so on.
Yes, we describe our office. I think of this role as being, really an ultimate custodian of the voice of the patient. And I think, having been a physician, I remember and I think daily about patients that I interacted with. I think about, fellow doctors. I think about healthcare systems, either that I worked in the United Kingdom or that I've had the chance to visit. You have that deep and very facile kind of relationship with that whole healthcare ecosystem. I think it's powerful because, everybody is facing difficulties. Healthcare is rationed. We have to think about how we can get our medicines most effectively to patients. And having had that experience, as you say, it lets you think deeply about the need of the patient, but also then that ecosystem that you have to exist in every day as well. And how can you bring those two together for the best possible outcome for people?
So, Dr. Paul, as a custodian on behalf of patients, and you've spoken about your daily roles and priorities, have you, if you didn't like a certain medication, how it's being developed, etc., have you had many occasions where you've put your hand up and the team said, no, this is not going well, not going to deliver the impact that we want? I'm sure you must have had many situations like that.
I can only honestly think of one, actually, at another company where during early testing of a medicine, there was a potential safety signal. And, teams become very attached to a potential medicine and they want to see it go forward into the clinic. And we looked at the data and it was clear that there was a liability with this molecule, again, at another company. And so I had to say, look, I don't think we can develop this any further. But that in 25 years is really the only one example. I would say in general, the way that we develop medicines, that we create molecules, take them through testing, and by the time they actually are about to go into human beings, they've been so thoroughly studied that in general, the biggest risk is, will they have the kind of benefit for people that we think they should have? That's the biggest risk. Most of the safety has been ironed out at that point.
Well, that's great to hear. And then we always hear about, how certainly Amgen ensures that patient voice is deeply integrated in new therapies, etc. But can you really explain in a layman way, how does that work? How do you get a bunch of patients? Is that through the clinical trials? Is that where it happens?
No.
How does that really work, throughout the development of new therapies?
We have a written mission, and it's on posters in the different buildings around the world. Our mission at Amgen is to serve patients. And I think we all feel a really deep responsibility for that. It's written into our into the fabric of us as people at the company. But you're right, we do. We have patient panels. We meet with patients. We talk to them about the medicines. We learn firsthand from them about their experiences with different diseases. We have a week at work usually in October called Mission Week, where we bring in patients and they tell us about their experiences getting on a medicine. Some of our staff members talk about their patient journeys. So, you can't just write it down and forget about it. We talk about it all the time. And as I say, I think we have a really deep, visceral responsibility that all of us feel, that our role here at Amgen is to try and improve the lives of patients. And if you do that, again, if you really bring that into the team, it makes it very powerful. You think about it constantly. We talk about it in meetings.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, if it's on your mission statement, you must have integrated this on every single policy that you have, and that's really comforting to know. That is why I suppose you have great medications that have really come to provide real impact for patients.
Yes.
Of course, we cannot not talk about access to care. There is a quote I would like to say. It says, a breakthrough that isn't accessible is a breakthrough incomplete. And definitely, there is this, let's say, tension between innovation and access always. And it would lose its moral value if it's inaccessible to those who need it most. I know Amgen you have many programs to address disparities in healthcare access, particularly for low and middle income countries. Can you tell me about the various programs that you have?
Yes, we agree with you completely. Medicines, a Surgeon General here in this country once said that medicines don't work in people who don't take them. It's very true.
Amazing.
Yes, it's really true, and we go to extreme lengths through education, through different programs, through talking to all sorts of stakeholders around the world to try and make sure of that. In the last few years here at Amgen, we've always done exactly what you say, but we've kind of formalized it recently. And we now have an organization called Global Public Health. And that organization has a remit to do exactly what you say, to talk about our medicines in low and middle income countries, but to then actually do programs to make sure that people can get them. And so we have 10 multi-year collaborations across 15 low and middle income countries. And in fact, since 2020, we've been able to bring our medicines to over 33 countries. We have a particular focus as well on cancer and childhood cancer. We work with the City Cancer Challenge Group, where we've sponsored millions of dollars over a 5-year effort in 5 low and middle income countries. We work with the World Child Cancer Partnership on a disease called Burkitt's lymphoma, and there we try and bring medicines and education to countries like Ghana, Cameroon, Malawi, Indonesia, and Nepal. We bring training again, as well as medicines and holistic support for the children and their families. And we've worked with St. Jude in medical center in something called the blinatumomab. That is one of our medicines called Blincyto, the blinatumomab humanitarian access program that also talks about education for children across India, Pakistan, and Vietnam in different types of leukemia. So again, we have it embedded in our fabric, our DNA, if you will, as a company. We see our responsibility globally. We have this organization, but then we put people, funds, real effort to actually drive that in those countries that really can benefit from us. So we try and bring it to life day in, day out.
Do you have a certain budget that you put for this program?
Yes, we do. And it changes over time. We prioritize it. We go through multiple different budget cycles, and the teams report back. We have people in different areas of the world, and so they will come back and they will say, look, there's a new program. We think it's going to be really valuable for this. Can we find the funding? And it's not always possible. We also live in a constrained environment. But, if we have to prioritize, we'll prioritize those programs. It's critical to what we do as Amgen.
And I really have to give a shout out to how happy I am that you're partnering with City Cancer Challenge, because this program, it was when I was president-elect at UICC, and I really fought for this initiative because, myself, from my experience coming from a low-middle-income country, having worked on the ground, I don't know if you know, I was the CEO of the King Hussein Cancer Foundation, and part of the team that transformed cancer care in Jordan. When I understood the pillars of this initiative, it made so much sense to me. It really took theory into practice and brought the work to the people on the ground. And I wished that when we were trying to figure our way, the team here in Jordan, that we would have had such an initiative. Please continue supporting the City Cancer Challenge.
Yes.
It's a long-term initiative. You're not going to see quick wins, but it's a program that will lay down the correct foundation that are so, the structure, the foundation and infrastructure for cancer care that's very much missing still from low and middle income countries. So it takes time. Please have the patience to continue with this program.
Yes.
And the other thing, of course, I'm very proud that you also work with UICC, my own organization that I became president of in 2018. And I know not only do you support World Cancer Day, which is an amazing advocacy and movement for people with cancer, which is really has grown tremendously, and it's very important to unite all patients' voice, all the global health cancer advocates together. So that's amazing. But also, I know you've also joined their ATOM program, the Access to Oncology Medicines Coalition. So that's really also fantastic. So you're working in different ways to support access in the various programs you have. So that's really fantastic. And I've also, when I was looking at my research, I see also that Amgen, you develop and distribute biosimilars. That's also helping with access, right?
Yes. Yes, it is. And, just to pick up on what you've said, we fully agree with you. I fully agree with you. This isn't a one and done. You can't come into one organization, make a little effort and then move on.
No.
It really is a long-term commitment. And we do that, as you say, with City Cancer Challenge. We're part of their seven-year program to find locally driven solutions in multiple countries around the world. So you have to come in and make that investment. And we're really committed to it. We're committed to the biosimilars program as well. We have some fantastic medicines through that program. We also work with the essential medicines list of the WHO, and we try and get some of our medicines. We have Neulasta, for example, a medicine that helps patients get their white blood cell count up when they're having cancer treatment. And we just submitted our application for Blincyto to go on that list. And then it's a powerful catalyst for how those medicines can then get increased access. But it's a journey, and it takes continued commitment and effort to bring this stuff to life. But again, that's what we're here to do. It
makes it a difference between life and death. When you get that the important medicine on the essential medicines list through WHO, ministries of health listen. So that side of work is so important. I've also, looking at my research, I see that you're also working a lot on giving access to clinical trials, whether from the people who are joining the clinical trials, you want to offer inclusion, and at the same time to give access to the countries themselves to actually perform clinical trials. And as the honorary president of the European Organization for Research and Cancer, EORTC, we are now trying to actually bring in clinical trials to the Middle East, with the King Hussein Cancer Center being the logistics center, but with many cancer centers across the Gulf actually joined in the partnerships. And they've started performing clinical trials. But I know in many low and middle income countries, I don't think they have the chance to do that. Maybe they don't have the landscape yet ready for them to perform and churn out credible data, etc. But I know you've done a lot of work on that. Can you tell us about that?
Clinical trials and clinical research are, a fundamental part of what we do. But I think they're an amazing way that we can really partner, not only with patients, but with healthcare systems and physicians as well. As you so rightly said, it's a way to talk about a disease. It's a way to talk about new and emerging medicines and treatment paradigms. It helps educate patients as well. And we do certainly conduct clinical trials throughout the Middle East and in the Gulf. they're complex. Clinical trials are complex. And in the 25 years that I have been doing this, what I have noticed is that actually clinical research is getting harder and harder to do and more complex. We go after, certainly at Amgen, we go after big, important, unmet medical needs, really serious medical conditions. And we want to bring transformational therapies to them. And so when you think about a clinical trial and clinical research, you have to find patients. You have to find physicians who can do the testing to enroll patients into those studies. The studies themselves are complicated. They go on for a long period of time. There's multiple testing. Patients have to come back, be reassessed throughout the period. So you do need this healthcare infrastructure. You need a workforce of physicians, nurses, pharmacists, that's able to then conduct the research. And you need a population of patients who are willing to do this and want to engage in research. And so, as I say, we're committed to the region, to lower middle income country clinical research, but it does have its own particular set of challenges, as you said, infrastructure, making sure that everybody is at the same kind of foundation of knowledge about the disease and that you have similar treatments for that disease as you would around the rest of the world. So we're there. I think it will continue to grow, but it just needs, that extra bit of kind of focus and dedication.
Yeah, well, I keep you posted about how the partnership across the Middle East, how it will develop. I don't know if you've heard about it, but I'll keep you posted. It takes time, like you said, to galvanize everybody on the same goal.
Yes.
What about rare diseases, Dr. Paul? How does, I know, that's an issue for many people. They always, you always go to conferences and you hear about, in general, that the market decides research on rare diseases because there's not enough people suffering from that disease. And yet there are people who need medications for rare diseases. How does Amgen deal with this? And how do you make your decisions to take on a rare disease?
We keep the patient at the center of everything we do. We think about the patient there as well. We talk to advocacy groups. We understand what the size of the patient group is, what the type of disease is, and then understand the biology underpinning it. We acquired another pharmaceutical company called Horizon a couple of years ago, and we have some remarkable medicines there that treat a variety of rare diseases, thyroid eye disease, some types of neurological conditions, now even including myasthenia gravis. And so we certainly continue our research. We have a very deep pipeline of different molecules that we're looking at for all sorts of rare diseases. And sometimes you can also take a medicine that is being used in one condition, and if you can understand the biology of it there and in a new rare disease, you can quite quickly bring it about and test it in another rare disease. So we certainly see it as an important area for us. We have a whole group dedicated, thousands of people within the enterprise that think about rare diseases every day. And, we welcome physician groups, patient advocacy groups to contact me, our organization, and tell us about diseases that they're interested in. And we'll try and do our piece there too.
So how does that work really? If I know about a rare disease, do you send an email? How does it work? You send an email, you have to have an organization. How does it work really?
Anyway, really. I mean, we certainly... patient advocacy groups reach out to us and we reach out to them and we interact with them. We have teams of people whose role is to talk to them on a regular basis. We have teams of scientists who are deeply knowledgeable about the rare disease and about the biology behind it. I get a lot of personal outreach through, LinkedIn, through all sorts of stuff. People reach out and I always make sure that I respond and try and understand what their issues are and see if there are solutions. So, while we're a large multinational biopharmaceutical company, we're a group of human beings who understand that there are patients out there who are suffering and need us, and we'll always try and help. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't, but we'll try.
And of course, when you talk about access to health, you also want to talk about gender equality in health and access to vulnerable groups, whether females in a certain population or racial population not receiving the access that they need to get, that they should get as human beings. So I know that Amgen last year announced a partner commitment to combat gender inequality in health in its different facets. Can you tell me more about that?
Yes. So again, it's something that we take a deep responsibility in within our enterprise as well. I'm so proud in so many meetings that I'm in that we have a very diverse leadership group all the way through our organization. It's something that Amgen really stands for. We mentioned, the City Cancer Challenge, CCAN. They have a 7-year, $10 million initiative really around this as well. How do you combat gender inequality in health? It's obviously a major topic. And, there are a number of cities that are involved in that throughout Mexico, Ghana, Georgia, so on, and throughout other parts of the world. And so we're working there. And I think we look to organizations like that who have deep expertise, who are leaders in this area. It's clearly a topic that we feel proud to support. So how can we work with great organizations who can take us on that journey and then recommend to us where do we bring our efforts and our resources to have maximal benefit? And, again, that's what we try and do day in, day out.
Dr. Paul, I know through your career journey, you had experience of the corona pandemic as a responder. What leadership lessons did you take from that time? And did the rapid vaccine development during COVID-19 change your perception of what's possible in clinical research?
Yes, it really did. I took away a couple of lessons, I think. One is the absolute need for transparency around data and data sharing. 2 is education. I think what the pandemic did for everybody was to bring to the forefront the desperate need for health literacy, to understand a disease, understand therapies, and how you can get access to them, as you've mentioned. I think in terms of drug development, it showed the world really what is possible. To go from an idea to a medicine in under a year was unthinkable to us. And so I think it's transformed the way that we interact with patients. We think about doing digital clinical trials and decentralized clinical trials that you can do from home. And that's a great thing. It will only have beneficial effects, I think, on our industry for decades to come. So I really took those learnings to heart.
But so the fact that it moved faster, mainly you would say because everybody shared data for the first time, is that what it is?
I think there was such an overwhelming global focus on getting a medicine, a vaccine to treat the pandemic. And it just crystallized everyone's effort in a way that we have been able to take, I think, in many of our development programs going forward. We learned that you can do things a lot faster. We're using artificial intelligence now as a tool to try and speed up how we do our regulatory filings, how we integrate data around safety profiles of our medicine. And I think the learnings from the pandemic probably accelerated that to some extent.
But I know, there are some good things that happened during COVID-19, and people found new ways and new solutions to do. Like you said, people doing clinical trials or focus groups from home, etc., which is great. But there are many good things that people stopped doing right when the COVID-19 finished. Do you think we've kept most of the good things so that I, as a layman individual, expect to see like faster, shall we say, implementation of getting medicines in less than 1 year? Is that still a possibility?
I think in certain areas, yes, it probably is a possibility. The diseases that we treat that we develop medicines for are complex. The development of those medicines can take a considerable period of time just to enroll patients, who are sometimes rare, as we've talked about. I think a couple of the fantastic things that continue today is the willingness of regulators around the world to think about developing medicines with us in a different way. And health organizations, whether those are government, health authorities, or non-government organizations, how they interact with the pharmaceutical organization today, I think has changed for the better in terms of speed and patient centricity. So I think we have taken some good things away.
I'm happy to hear that. I'm certainly happy to hear that. And I'm sure my listeners are. And then, of course, you mentioned artificial intelligence, that you're leveraging it in your pharma sector today. Apart from speeding up certain things, in what other ways can you use it?
Well, as you said, I'm the chief medical officer at Amgen. My boss is a man called Dave Reese, who is a physician, but is our chief technology officer. So I report into a chief technology officer because we understand as an organization that intersection of biology and medicine and artificial intelligence today, technology, is what Dave talks about as a hinge moment. It's going to, rapidly catapult us forward. And so we use artificial intelligence to analyze the huge amounts of data that we have collected over the years, both in looking at biological systems and then how patients respond to medicines and their disease. We use it to think about the design of molecules and medicines. We use it to speed up how we do our clinical trials. And then more and more today, we're using it in my organization. Not only as we interact with patients, can we provide solutions for them that are based on artificial intelligence and technology, but can we speed up the process by which we get medicines approved? Oftentimes we take about half a year to submit a file to a regulator on a new medicine that we're developing so that the regulator can think about it and decide whether or not to approve it. You can use artificial intelligence to shrink that timeline over half today. And we're trying to do that. So, it has a fundamental part in our organization, and we're using it in multiple different ways, all with that final focus of how do you improve speed of access for patients and how do you improve their ultimate outcome.
And I hope the regulators also use AI to speed up their part of the bargain, right?
Yes, they definitely see it.
You've spoken about, or I've read somewhere actually, that Amgen has spoken about a new era of therapies like bispecific T-cell engagement. Where do you see the biggest breakthroughs coming next?
We do indeed have a large program in bispecific T-cell engagers that we call BITE molecules. Blincyto that I talked about is one of those, and it's revolutionized the treatment of leukemia in different groups, transformed it. We have another one called Imdelltra that we're presenting data on at ASCO in small cell lung cancer. It's already approved, and really it's revolutionized the management, the treatment of that disease, which for many patients was a death sentence, and it's transforming that. We have other ones in development. We try and bring the very best science that we can to some of the world's toughest diseases. I think BITEs are a great example, but we have all sorts of other examples, not only in cancer, but across cardiovascular disease, inflammation, and many other diseases, rare diseases. So we will never stop striving. We understand that the future of medicine requires different approaches, different platforms of drugs, and probably combinations of medicines as well.
Exactly. I can definitely see that. And looking back at your journey so far, what's the most important leadership lesson you've learned, do you think?
Resilience. Be resilient. What we do is difficult. What our teams do is really difficult. It's emotionally difficult. You're dealing with extremely sick people all around the world who depend on you. And you have to feel that to drive what we do. And the art and the science of getting a medicine approved and into human beings is incredibly hard. And to do that successfully, you have to be resilient. And we're a company that's been around for only 45 years, but we have 35 medicines available to humans today, and we have many more in development. The only way you can do that is through grit and resilience, and I think it's critical.
Other final reflections, if you look 10 years ahead, what gives you hope, most hope, about the future of medicine and patient care? And is there a patient story or a personal encounter that probably stayed with you and reminded you why this work matters?
Look, I do think that artificial intelligence, it's not going to replace medicine. It's not going to replace doctors and nurses and pharmacists and the healthcare system, but it is going to enable it. And I think it's going to unleash a new era of deep patient centricity, where patients will get better educated, they'll understand their disease journey, they'll understand when and how to intervene. So I think 10 years from now, when we're hopefully talking about this again, we'll look back and say, yes, artificial intelligence has really improved the lives of people around the world. I think it will. I think about many of the patients, they reach out, and some of them end up on our medicines. We can help them get on that. And you take people from despair, where they're at this most brutal moment in their life, where they've run out of all hope. And I think what our organization, what our industry does, is to step into that moment and give people hope. And I'm incredibly proud to have been able to play a small part in that, and now to be in this role at Amgen. And hopefully we'll continue to do that, give people hope where they have run out.
Yeah. You're so articulate, Dr. Burton, really. You're really saying it exactly as it is, and always bringing it back to your mission, which is to serve the patients. And it's very clear with every sentence that you say. I heard through the grapevine that, yes, you're not chopping up bodies anymore, but you are chopping wood. Is this your personal hobby? And when do you get to practice your hobby with all the travel that you have to do and the workload?
Yeah, I love doing woodwork, and I have 2 kids, and at least one of them likes doing it as well with me sometimes.
When do you do it? In the weekend?
Yeah, in the weekend, in home, in the garage or wherever. I get less and less time. It comes in fits and starts. But yeah, it's great. It's great to do something completely different. And it lets me use my hands.
Yes, and to chop up something to fill up that gap. My husband, he makes me watch every morning. He follows on YouTube these people who go to Italy, a soul individual goes to Italy, finds a hut of some sort, and he rehabilitates that hut. And he keeps threatening me that this is what we will do when he retires.
I would love to do that.
You would love that. So maybe I should put you two together.
Yes, we'll go and we'll check it out.
We'll put you two. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Paul Burton, for an amazing interview. And thank you for being with us and sharing not only the work in Amgen, but really explaining to us all and to our listeners of what does a chief medical officer at Amgen think about. And we're really heartened to know that in everything that you do, you are thinking and putting patients first. Thank you for all that you do, and I hope to meet you one day in person. And thank you for joining Global Health Dialogues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Highness. It's a privilege to be here.
Thank you.